Joining us now, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, former commanding general of U.S. Army Europe and MS Now military analyst. It's always good to see you, General. Look, missiles, drones, naval fighting, none of this amounts to a violation of the ceasefire, according to the administration. And of course, it's an important question because Democrats argue Trump has passed the authorization window in the War Powers Act. How would you describe where this conflict stands right now?
Anytime there is a ceasefire, Chris, there's always kind of these random shootings. But truthfully, in watching the last couple of days, these are more than just random. These are obvious attacks by the Iranian government against merchant shipping and, in many cases, U.S. naval vessels. So I would say personally that it does appear to be a violation of the ceasefire. And I think it's primarily because the president doesn't want to go back into kinetic operations against Iran. He's looking for it to expand a little bit. He's looking for Iran to take his proposals in terms of allowing ships to move through the straits. But I don't think we're going to see that. Iran has not basically ponied up to any of these negotiating tools, and they're still willing to keep the straits closed as best they can. They will suffer slightly because of it, but it's also indicative of a process, a peace process that is not going well. The negotiations are not achieving the results that either side wants them to achieve.
Well, according to the Joint Chiefs Chairman, Dan Kane, there are more than 1,550 commercial vessels right now trapped in the Arabian Gulf. So far, just 2 ships have successfully been escorted out, and we've seen Iran's aggressive reaction. So I wonder what you're watching for as this operation plays out.
Well, you said something very important in terms of escorting ships, Chris. I'm not sure that is the technique the Navy is going to use. They're trying to clear lanes. When you're talking about personally escorting ships, man, you know, the hundreds and even up to 2,000 ships that are in the strait or to the western part of the strait, that's going to take a whole lot of effort by the U.S. Navy to escort them out. They are clearing lanes. They're hopefully trying to find the locations where Iran has laid mines so lanes can be cleared. But they're looking to find ways to get those ships out of there, possibly without escorting them. And the reason I say that is because there are so few, relatively few, I should say, destroyers and cruisers that can escort. You certainly can't ensure all of those ships are taken out of the straits and back into free water unless you have some type of proposed convoy for the ships. And that certainly would mask a target for the Iranians to strike with their missiles and some of their drones.
None of this is making voters happy. According to a new Washington Post ABC News poll, 66% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the war, the latest in what has been, frankly, a punishing wave of bad polling for the president. But he has been dismissive. Listen.
They did a poll on the war with Iran, and they said only 32% of the people like it. Well, I don't like it, and I don't like war at all, but we're equipped better than it. We have the greatest military in the world. Well, when you explain it, like, is it okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon? It wouldn't be 32%. But even if you said that, there'd be a 32% because the polls are fake. I mean, they're totally fake.
What does it mean for the U.S. to be fighting a war with an overwhelming lack of support from the American people and, frankly, the dismissiveness of their beliefs, their feelings, their lived experience, everyday people?
Yeah, that's a staggering comment by the president, Chris. I mean, one of the things he's suggesting is he is dismissing the American people. And it is the government writ large, which means Congress, and the American people that have to be pulled together to support any kind of actions where America's sons and daughters are put into harm's way. And yeah, the president is absolutely right. People don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. But that's a very different question than saying, do you support a war? There's a whole lot more to war objectives than just using military force. And I think that's what the American people are rebelling against. There should be diplomacy, information, and economic powers brought to bear against against Iran, and that isn't happening. The president is relying on one tool, and that's the military. The military is conducting very good operations, but it isn't enough to bring Iran to bear. I heard the Secretary of Defense this morning when he was asked about whether or not the strategic objectives were well known. And he said, of course they are. And then he didn't describe what those strategic objectives were and how they were going to be reached. That's why we're losing support. The president is losing support for this war because he has not availed himself of his allies. He hasn't tried to pull others into this fight, and he hasn't listed what the strategic objective is other than trying to open the straits. And that in and of itself does not dictate ways and means of doing so.